Hello, my name is Ian Currey and this is Thinking Out Loud. Have you ever tried to do something that you just know how to do, but then suddenly you can't remember how? Now, I'm not talking about new math, where once we leave it behind at school, most people forget if you do the adding or what's inside the brackets first. No, I'm talking about everyday normal stuff. Come on, let me tell you what I think. Every now and then I come across a strange part of the Bible that makes me do a double take. This week I rediscovered a story about a group of men that seem to be trainee prophets or something, and they're working something like an apprenticeship under the prophet Elisha. One day the group of prophets came to Elisha and told him, "As you can see, this place where we meet with you is too small. Let's go down to the River Jordan where there are plenty of logs. There we can build a new place for us to meet." Now, for whatever reason, I don't think Elisha was all that impressed by this. I can imagine him thinking, "Young whippersnappers, what's wrong with my place?" "All right," he told them, "go ahead." "Oh, please come with us," someone suggested. "Oh, all right, I will," he said. So he went with them. When they arrived at the Jordan, they began cutting down trees. But as one of them was cutting a tree, his axe head fell into the river. "Oh, sir," he cried, "it was a borrowed axe." And back then, I would think it would be a big deal. I mean, you couldn't just go down to the local DIY home improvement store and buy a new one, now could you? And these iron tools must have been both rare and costly. Certainly you couldn't just say, "Oops, oh well," and tell your friend, "Sorry." I mean, this was a big deal. "Where did it fall?" the man of God asked. When he showed him the place, Elisha cut a stick and threw it into the water at that spot. Then the axe head floated to the surface. "Grab it," Elisha said, and the man reached out and grabbed it. Now, this is a bit of a strange story, and instead of saying the axe head floated to the surface, the old King James Version says, "and the iron did swim." And I always thought that was a funny way to say something. But in either case, something weird is going on. I had to dig around and some study books were found, and I must say that there are a lot of rather eloquent expansions on this story. Sometimes I think that the authors of such study books need to sit down and read some Winnie the Pooh and just accept that sometimes strange things happen. But then I got thinking, I have a hammer somewhere that has a loose head, and I've done all the normal things. I've pounded a couple of wedges into the top to tighten it up. And I've even dunked it into a bucket of water to make the wood swell up, to make the handle tight inside the head. But nothing seems to work for very long. It's just not a great hammer. I'm always afraid of it flying off and hitting someone, so I use another one instead. Well, back when this story was playing out of the axe head, I wonder how axes were held together. How did you hold the head to the handle? I know we sometimes see them drawn being tied on by cords, but to cut a tree down with an axe that has its head tied on with string seems a little extreme. I think perhaps we don't give these ancient craftsmen enough credit for their ingenuity sometimes. There were no power tools back then, no mass manufacturing processes, and probably very little uniformity to tools. To borrow an axe head, you would then have to look after it carefully. Certainly you'd have to make sure it was sharp, but also however it was attached to the handle would have to be checked and adjusted, often probably. If not, well, then as we see in the story, into the river the head goes. I've seen a lot of expansions on this story over the last couple of days as I've dug around. Most of them just seem too complicated for me. Take a look at what the old man Elisha says. Where did it fall? And that part makes a lot of sense to me. Last week, my brother made me very jealous by showing me pictures of a couple of steam trains that have been running on the main line in Britain. I love these old high-speed trains that have to slot into busy timetables on the British main line, and they do it with such elegance. Long ago, when we lived in England, there was a similar steam-operated excursion that caught my attention in the news. The steam engine arrived in a major station, and although full of steam and running beautifully that day, could go no further. The issue was that the fireman on the footplate had tried to wiggle the grate to lose some of the clinker and ash that would choke the fire, and in doing so had done something wrong, and instead of just the ash, had managed to drop the whole fire, the grate and everything else, out onto the track. So while there was a full boiler full of steam, there was no way to keep the water hot to make more steam. The fire was gone. And although right at that moment everything seemed all right, eventually the engine would have slowed to a halt and run out of steam. So let's do that in a station. The wise old fitter engineer who came along to see what could be done asked the same question Elisha asked. Where did it fall? And the repair crew had to go back to the place things went wrong before any new progress could be made. When we're talking about faith and keeping our thoughts and actions in line with what we say we believe, this same principle applies. We must pay attention to how things are held together. Make sure we stay sharp. And when things do go wrong with our thinking, return to the place where it all falls apart, pick up the pieces and have a rethink, start again. Having wise older people who can ask the same question and lead us back to the place where things went wrong and perhaps help us through the process of putting things back together is very important, isn't it? Sometimes asking a simple question can be the first step to getting things back on the right course. Perhaps not with the sigh, but where did it fall? It's a great question, isn't it? Sometimes old wise people know a thing or two too and can make iron swim. How sharp is your faith these days? What are you doing to make sure you keep that sharp edge? Do you have someone who can help you keep your faith in difficult times? Thank you for watching another episode of Thinking Out Loud. Until next time, goodbye.